I want to ask you an opening question today. Um, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's something wrong with our world. Have you noticed this? Yeah, okay. Do any of you ever watch the news or get online or read a newspaper if you can find those anymore? Or maybe it's not really an out there thing. Like you see it out there, you know there's wars that are raging and there are people with problems. But maybe you turn the news off or you close social media, but you start looking around at your own life. And you see that the problem isn't just out there, it's much closer to home, maybe even in your home. And if you're really, really honest with yourself, it's not just out there or just kind of around me more closely, but it's in me. There's something wrong in our world, right? And even though not all of us are into reading or literary themes like that, but we can all still recognize that there's a darkness, right? It's in our world, it's in our schools, it's everywhere we look, and it's even within us. And we got a problem. And as Christians, we recognize this, right? The problem is sin. The problem is Satan. It's the forces of darkness, and it's a very real problem that we don't just talk about. It's something we got to deal with. But the question that I want us to be thinking about today in particular isn't recognizing the darkness in our world and in our lives and even in our own hearts. The question isn't, do people need light? That's obvious. You don't even have to be a Christian to recognize something's wrong. There's darkness in our world. We need to shine a light. But the better question that we need to ask is, what light are we going to shine? What light is it that people really need to address the darkness in our world, in our homes, and in our lives? And that's what we're going to talk about this morning. And we're going to do it in very simple ways, two ways. The first half of the sermon, I'm going to give us some examples of false or unhelpful lights that we often deal with or we often are drawn to. And we're going to talk about what they look like in our lives and why they're problematic. And then the second part of the sermon, we're going to look at the true light that God has given us that we all so desperately need. Okay? So here's the first example of a false or unhelpful light. I term it festive lights. I want to ask you a question by a show of hands. There's no wrong answer here. How many of you decorate your home for Christmas? Yeah, most of us, right? How many of you put lights on your home outside, like on the roof line or trees or bushes like that? Some of you do, some of you don't. It's expensive, I know, if you don't do it yourself. Let me ask you these other questions. How many of you have a Christmas tree that's set up with lights? Good. How many of you have more than one Christmas tree? How many of you have more than 3 Christmas trees and they have different themes? Okay, there's some of you. Good. How many of you have one of those little Christmas villages that you set up with all the little houses in the neighborhood? You know what I'm talking about? Okay, more than I thought. This is not a setup, by the way. This is good. I hope you decorate for Christmas. I hope you brings you a lot of joy. But let me ask you this follow-up question now. When do you start celebrating or decorating for Christmas? How many of you wait for December 1st? None. How many of you wait for the day after Thanksgiving? A lot of you. How many of you sneak it in as early as possible, even before Thanksgiving? A couple of you. Okay, that's what I thought. Again, there's no wrong answers here, but this is where this is all going. How long, then, do you leave your decorations up? How many of you make it all the way to New Year's? Does anyone go beyond New Year's? A little bit. How many of you make it to February? Okay, good. So, we're all on the same page. Again, here's where I'm going with this. As pretty or as fun or as joyful as festive lights are and can be, how long are they up and shining? Once a year, for maybe a month, and then where do they go? We take them down and we put them back in storage, and then we wait for the next year to bring them back out again. Here's where I'm going with this. We do the same thing in our lives as Christians. We shine that same kind of light when we turn our faith into just a seasonal decoration. So we shine this type of light when our faith is bright and it's vibrant and it's joyful and it's intentional. It's on full display, but it's seasonal. So maybe we just get really active in our faith during certain times of year. Maybe it's Christmas. It's a good one. Or maybe it's Easter, my personal favorite. Or maybe it's more than Christmas and Easter, and it's Sundays, but it's still limited to that. It's limited to like a space in time or a certain place that's church related. That's when our faith is on display. We present this type of light when our faith becomes more about attendance, even good attendance, than it is about daily obedience. We put up this type of light in our lives when we're not ashamed of our faith, but it's only on display for a little bit of time. It's not out. It's not active. It's not up long enough to make much of a difference in the world around us. People can just write it off. That's just what they do on Sundays. It's a seasonal, festive light. That's not the light that we need or our world needs. So let's try again. Let's talk about floodlights. Let's talk about floodlights. It's a second example. Several years ago at my previous church, I was leading a young adult small group, and it was this time of year, and we put together a little Christmas party for the young adults, and we set up a photo booth, or we were trying to set up a photo booth, because we were wearing like ugly Christmas sweaters. We had a Christmas tree and all that kind of fun stuff, and so we wanted to take fun pictures. We had a tripod. We had all the stuff you needed, except the lighting in our room just wasn't very good. And I had seen in my mind, you know, if you ever been to like a photography studio or anything like that, they have these big lights on stands, right? And it helps kind of fill out the scene. I'm a non-professional, as you can tell, but it provides more light so you can take a better quality photo. And I didn't have any of those professional ones, but I remembered I had seen down in the janitor's closet for some reason, like construction grade floodlights. I was like, yes! We need more light. I found more light. And so I went down and I brought those out and I set them up. And how do you think that went for us? Terrible. It was so brutal. I mean, it brought more light. We needed more light and it brought more light. But you couldn't even really look at the camera because it's so overwhelming and so harsh. And I don't know if it was just because I had like an old set of floodlights or what, but that put off a serious amount of heat that I was getting real nervous that I was going to burn the church down. So we just unplugged them and we just took lights, pictures in the dark. Here's where I'm going with this. Technically speaking, those floodlights did provide lots and lots of light that we needed, but it ended up causing more problems than it actually solved. It was the wrong kind of light. And I think Christians and churches, we do the same thing if we come on too strong and too forceful with things. We shine this type of floodlight, this harsh floodlight, when we're argumentative and we're combative as Christians. When we're trying to force people to see what we see and to like what we like. When we come on really strong at Christmas and we're not full of joy, we're full of criticism because we think people don't celebrate Christmas as good as we do or in the same ways that we do. And even if we're saying good and true things, we're doing so in a manner that people can't handle. It's overwhelming and it's harsh and it provides more heat than anything. And people are turned off by that. So again, even though we're providing some sort of light, it's not the light that people need. So let's try again. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum. Let's talk about night lights. How many of you have had a night light in your home for yourself or for kids or for grandkids? So how do night lights work? What do they do? They very simply help children not be so afraid of the dark. And how do they do it? Do they do it by getting rid of all the darkness? Do they do it by exposing everything that might be in the darkness? They don't. Instead, they're a soft, gentle light. Just kind of takes the edge off, helps them be a little bit less scared in this one corner of this one room. So maybe you can see where I'm going with this. We do the same thing as Christians. We plug in this sort of light when we make Christmas really more about sentimental nostalgia than anything else, or just general notions of holiday cheer and goodwill. We show this kind of light to the world when we live like being a Christian is more about being comfortable in my space and in my church than it is about going out into the world and following Christ's call of discipleship. We shine this type of light when Jesus is really just reserved for nice, neat people who go to church on Sundays. But if you look at their life, there's really no evidence that they know him or trust him or obey him or even that they know how badly they need him. Now, there's nothing wrong with a kid wanting a nightlight, right? Similarly, there's nothing wrong with people wanting and seeking to find comfort in their faith in Jesus, but we need to recognize a nightlight is limited by design. It can't really push back the darkness in the ways that we need a light to. Besides, kids tend to grow out of them anyway. So that can't be what our faith is about. That can't be the light that we have and the light that we shine. People need something better. Let me give you one more example. Tanning lights. Tanning lights. By a show of hands, how many of you have ever gone tanning or been outside to sunbathe? How many of you are not being honest with me right now? Okay. Most of us. Most of us. You could probably tell from my skin complexion. I don't get a lot of sun, and I don't retain a lot of sun. My sister has described me as translucent, and that's things that she and I are trying to work out together. But do you know, as pale as I am year round, do you know how easy it would be if it bothered me, if I was hurt by it, if I wanted to be tan? Do you know how easy it would be for me to go get tan? I Googled it just this past week. Did you know there are 10 different tanning salons within a 20-mile radius of our church? So within 20 minutes or so, I could go about fixing my pale skin problem, right? But be honest with me, if I did that, how would y'all respond? Like if y'all come on the 22nd, I hope you do, if you come to Carols and Candlelight, our Christmas service, if you come and you see me and I'm like just beautifully bronze, will you notice a difference? Absolutely, you'll notice that something has changed about this guy. It's very obvious, but will it feel or look natural? It probably won't. And if you saw me today and you see me then, you'll recognize something's off. Yes, there's a change, but it feels kind of forced, and it's probably not real. It's probably fake, right? But the bigger question you need to ask yourself, that I would need to ask myself, as clear as that change is, how deep is that change? And how long is it going to last? Again, maybe you can see where I'm going with this. We set up tanning lights for people when we make the life of faith just about fixing up what they don't like on the outside. We give people tanning lights when we're more focused on changing outward behavior than we are about cultivating inward character. We point people to tanning lights when we care more about looking good and holy than actually being good and holy. We shine tanning lights when we lead people to believe that being a Christian is just about you getting what you want on your timeline according to your preferences and convenience. We settle for tanning lights when we celebrate Christmas or go to church really just to soak up God's blessings, more so than we are to listen or obey or worship and honor him. Again, hear me, there's nothing wrong necessarily with caring about what you look like or seeking to change what you look like, how you present yourself to the world. That's fine to a degree, but we have to remember how deep is the change and how long will it last. We need something more than tanning lights. So in each of these 4 examples, I know they were silly, but there was an element of truth in each one. That there's a draw and appeal to each one, not just in theory, but in our lives, that there's something good, there's something true about these different types of lights that we're drawn to or that we present to the world, but we recognize, hopefully, that each of them have some serious flaws. And at best, they're limited, and they can't provide the type of light that we need and our world needs. But there's good news today, isn't there? That God has not left us on our own, fumbling about in the dark, trying to come up with the light that we need. God knows we need the light, and God has provided the light that we need. If you have your Bibles, go now to John chapter 8. John 8 will be in verse 12, just one verse this morning. John chapter 8, this is Jesus speaking. Again, Jesus spoke to them saying this, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. I am the light of the world, Jesus says. Now, this has become really common terminology for us as Christians today, all these years after Jesus. We celebrate at this time of year at Christmas that Jesus is the light of the world, but we need to recognize in this original setting, when Jesus said this for the first time, it wasn't a commonplace notion. It was not appropriate for him to say. It would have been shocking and kind of alarming for him to say what he said. See, in John chapter 7, just a chapter before, it tells us that when Jesus said this, he and the disciples were in Jerusalem for what is called the Feast of Tabernacles or the Feast of Booths. And this is a festival that happens every year in the fall, and it's a week long, and there are all these different activities and ceremonies and events that take place throughout the week. And ancient sources tell us that this was an incredibly sacred and important time for the people, and it was absolutely stunning to get to be there and to witness and be part of it. And one key aspect that they did, and a lot of Jews today still do, from what I understand, involved making makeshift tents either in their backyards today or up on their roofs, because they had flat roofs back then. And what that represented, these booths or these tabernacles, was a reminder of the 40 years that God's people spent in the wilderness on the way to the promised land. But there was another special part of the festival that involved this over-the-top, truly magnificent display of light. So they had these 4 giant lampstands up to 75 feet tall, and they had to climb up these massive ladders just to get to the top to light them. And then they would set these 4 massive lampstands up outside the temple where everyone could come and gather. And again, people looked forward to this festival, so they were coming to town to be there. And when they would light these lampstands at night, it was unbelievable. They were huge and they were massive. And again, in a day, but before there was electricity, to have the whole city lit up like this was stunning to see. And sources tell us that you could see the light all across the city. Even if you weren't at the temple, you could see and feel the light in your own home. But then it gets even better. They didn't just light these massive lights as a reminder of God's presence amongst his people, how he led them through the wilderness as a pillar of fire, right? They also had a worship service as part of it. So once they would light it, the people would rejoice and then literally spill out into the streets of the city, singing and dancing and worshiping. Think about it if you can. There's not really a modern equivalent to it, but like New Year's Eve and Times Square, right? Tons of people are there. There's lights, there's activity, there's celebration. But imagine that kind of scene, but filled with worship too. That's the environment. That's the setting that Jesus was dealing with when he said this. So Jesus, right in the middle of all that, right in the middle of this scene with this visual, with these lamps lit, Jesus says, you see those lights? They're not what you think they are. Do you see those lights? It's impossible not to see those lights. Do you know what they're really about? Do you know what they're really lighting up? Do you know what they're really trying to show you? He says, it's me. It's me. The presence of God with his people. It's me. That the presence of God is a light of guidance and goodness and wholeness and blessing for his people. Jesus says it's me. And that might be shocking news for people to hear, but Jesus says it's also good news. And here's why. He says, I'm not just a light for the city at a festival once a year. He says, I'm the light for the whole world and I'm here to stay. I'm never burning out. Jesus says, if you follow me, and then I'll show you. If you follow me, you can have this light too. If you follow me, then you too can walk in the fullness of life as God designed it. In other words, hopefully this comes as no surprise to you today, but Jesus is the light that we need. Jesus is the light that we need. He is the light that God sent into the dark places of our world and our homes and even our own hearts and minds. Jesus is the light of God's presence and goodness and guidance and blessing. And it's not just something that God sends from far off. It's not just a care package. God is busy somewhere else and he sent this light to help us. Jesus stands up, living and breathing right in the midst of the people who need him most. And he says, I am here. The light has come. So at Christmas, that's the light that we're talking about, right? That's the light that we're celebrating. We're celebrating the presence of real, true, meaningful life with a capital L and how it has come to us. In the words of Isaiah the prophet, it has dawned upon us. So no matter what else happens in this world or in our lives, we can know that the light of Jesus is here to stay. And no matter what happens in our world or in our lives, we can know that the light of Jesus isn't just here to stay, but it's going to get brighter and stronger and better and more beautiful for the rest of eternity. But it keeps getting better. If you're still taking notes, I want you to write down one more thing. See, the light of Jesus is not only something that we see and receive. It's what? It's something we get to go and share. Look again at the second part of what Jesus says in verse 12. It says, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. So do we see how there's two parts to what Jesus says here? First, he makes this bold and this audacious claim that he's not a light, a helpful guidance. He is the light, the real and true light. So we have to decide first and foremost if we agree with him or not. And if we don't believe him, or if we think he's being absurd, then we can just stop reading and we can move on with our business as usual. But if we do believe him, then we have to pay attention to what he says next. He says, then follow me. So what we have here is a call to discipleship, not just to hear about Jesus, not just to know more about who he is or what God has sent him to do, and not just kind of like a mental understanding of Jesus being the light of the world, not just receiving what it is that he alone offers. Jesus himself, the light himself, says, if you believe this, if you've received this, if I've shined upon you, then you follow me. You follow me, right? So we are told to go where he goes. That means we're going to do what he does. That means we're going to seek what he seeks. We're going to be about what he's about. He is our light, and we are to follow him. And as we do that, the promise is that the light that he has shined upon us will then become alive within us and then shine out through us. Do we see the difference? So if we truly do believe what Jesus is saying here, that he is the light of the world, that he is the light that we need, that our families need, that our neighborhood, that everyone needs, then that's absolutely going to change the way that we experience Christmas and how we present it to others. One of my favorite authors and theologians was a man named Frederick Buechner, and he tells a story about a friend of his who was the pastor of a church. And so I'm going to tell you this story. It's third hand at this point, but it's so beautiful and powerful. So the guy says that one year they had a Christmas pageant of sorts, a Christmas service, and they had their kids, like most churches do, part of the service. And the kids were processing in from the back, being all cute, and they're coming up to the front. I think they had a manger scene set up. And as they're coming in, there's one little girl in particular that was just younger and smaller. So she couldn't quite keep up with the group. And then when she got to the stage, to the front where she was supposed to be, she was out of place, but she was small and she couldn't get to where she was going. And she kept trying to tuck in here and there. And she couldn't because all the kids were gathering around the manger. And he said that the little girl started to get visibly upset and she was getting frustrated. And then eventually she just stops and throws up her hands. And in this tiny, sweet, grief-stricken voice, she cries out, "Let Jesus show." And in a move that the pastor said was the best thing he had ever done, he stopped the service right there, and he gave the benediction, and he dismissed the people. Let Jesus show. He said that was probably the simplest and yet most profound sermon that had ever been preached in that place. If Jesus truly is the light of the world, then he is what we need to be showing people at Christmas. And if we belong to him, if we have received his light, then we are no longer spectators on the sidelines of Christmas. We have work to do. What did Jesus himself say in Matthew chapter 5, speaking to those who belong to him, those who follow him? He says, "You are the light of the world. So let your light shine before others so that they will see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven." So as Christians at Christmas time, we don't just enjoy it. We should. But we don't just sit here and soak up the goodness of the light that God has given us. We take that light and we reflect it. We take that light out into the world and go make an impact so they can see and have Jesus too. Let me close with this. Kind of a closing question. Where does light go? Where does light belong? Where do we need light? In the darkness, right? Light goes into the darkness. And if that's what God was doing in Jesus, again, sending his light that we needed into the dark places of our world and our lives, our hearts and our minds, our relationships, everything, if that's what God is up to, and if that's what he's brought us into, then what do you think we should be doing with our lives? So the bottom line is Christmas is not just a holiday, it's an opportunity. Christmas is not just a celebration, it's a commissioning. So many people around the world know all about Christmas, but they don't know a thing about Jesus. So many people all around the world will put Christmas lights up, but they don't know the light of the world. So let me ask us again, what light are we going to show them? Will we let Jesus show? Will we shine the light of the world so that the world can come to know the goodness of our God and our King?